You're listening to Mom AF with Kaeli
and Jessica.
This is the fiercely comfortable podcast for moms who are done pretending everything's fine when it's actually a dumpster fire.
We're two moms who happen to be nurses and we've seen it all. Postpartum breakdowns, mom rage, identity loss, and a whole lot of what the
We're here to keep it real with laughter, tears, probably too much trauma dumping, and just enough chaos to make you feel right at home.
So grab your cold coffee that you forgot in the microwave, park your kid in front of that electronic babysitter, and let's normalize this mess together.
Are you ready?
I'm so ready.
All right, Jess, what is something that caused you to have an absolute meltdown during pregnancy?
So I was like 9 months pregnant and I was trying to get the baby to come out. So I was going on hikes like every single day. And so I texted my sister and I was like, do you want to meet me over at Lemon Lake? And she's like, yeah. So we get there and I'm just listening to music, and it was not an emotional song. It was Glorious by Macklemore. And there's a line in the song that says his grandma's looking down at him. And my grandma died before I even got pregnant, died before I got married. And for some reason, I just thought of my grandma and just had a full-blown breakdown. And I don't mean like a little tear. I mean bawling. I had to pull over. So I finally get to where I have to hike with my sister. My face is swollen. I'm puffy. I'm crying. She's like, what's wrong? I'm like, Grandma died. And she's like, yeah, like a year and a half ago. Yeah, she's gone. And I cried the whole hike. We hiked like 3 miles and I continued to just have these big tears rolling down my face. She's like, do you want to stop? I'm like, no, we just have to keep going.
Oh my God.
I think I cried until I got home.
Pregnancy brings out the real emotions. You can't control anything that happens. I feel like
your grandma died.
Or, you can't control that either. But I feel like when I was pregnant, I didn't cry at things. I just got like mad really easily, like so easily. And I remember Will's mom being at our house to help us. And I remember we were all sitting on the couch and she's like asking like what she can do to help, and like the rage building up in me. And how ridiculous does that sound? Like, and every time she spoke, I would get so mad, like irrationally mad. Like I felt like my blood pressure rising. And I texted Will being like, can you ask your mom to leave, please? Because I can't. It turned out I was like in labor. I was in full blown labor and I just couldn't handle people talking to me and asking me things. But I didn't realize that. I just thought that I was just like, please, I can't handle you talking. Get out of here. So, like, I guess there's a reason for it, but, like, I just would get so mad over everything for no reason.
No, and my husband loves to tell people that I hated him when I got pregnant, and we worked so hard to get pregnant. You know, we did fertility treatments, and he, took his really hard test.
So hard.
Yeah.
So hard.
Yeah. But as soon as I got pregnant, I didn't like him. He came to bed and I was like, why do you smell like that? He's like, I don't know. I took a shower like yesterday. I was like, either you go and you take a shower or you get the fuck away from me because you stink. And he was like, you're being kind of rude. I'm like, you're being kind of stinky. And
you smell?
I didn't like how he breathed. I didn't like how he looked. He smelled like, get away from me. I was mean as shit.
That's so relatable, though. Smells like colognes, I could not do it.
He doesn't even wear cologne. It was just, I don't know. His pheromones pissed me off. Yeah.
You did this to me.
I wasn't even uncomfortable. I didn't have any like morning sickness. I didn't have anything to really complain about, just fatigue, but he stunk. I didn't like him at all. That's how you know I'm pregnant. I start not liking him.
I mean, that's me like on a daily basis, not liking a man, but I get that too.
Yeah, like feed me some spicy food and don't fucking talk to me.
That's incredibly relatable for a daily basis here in this household.
So what are some of your favorite terms when referencing your vagina? And for the purpose of us being nurses, we understand that we're referencing a vulva. However, it's a vagina.
I genuinely like the word vagina. I think it's classic. I think it's straight to the point. But if I'm being sassy, I do like the word snatch. I think it's fun. I like it. I like to use the word twat. But usually when I'm referencing somebody, because I think it's a little funny calling somebody a twat. You fucking twat.
Oh, that's I really like. I think the insults where they're not really insults, they're just kind of like if you call someone a scallywag, they're like you call them like a son of a bitch or something, but you call them a scallywag, they're like, did you just like go back in time to insult me? Like, I think they're far more effective than swear words.
Oh yeah. Oh, if we're gonna get on the topic for just one quick second, the word loser. I don't know what I hate when people call somebody else that. I think it's so hurtful to call somebody a loser. Like, oh, what a loser. I'm gutted. You think I'm a loser?
Like calling someone a coward.
Yes.
Like that cuts to the bone. Like you didn't call them a swear word, but you came at their soul. Like,
yes,
I think
like your character.
Those can be way more hurtful.
Yeah. Oh, I can't. Okay, what's your favorite word for vagina?
I like coochie. And then if I'm being like ridiculous, I like to call it a cooter. But some phrases that I've heard other people say that I really like are lady bits, hoo-ha, and I always think it's so classy when women call it their flower.
Their flower.
And I'm like, wow, here I am calling it my pussy. And you're like, oh, my flower. You're so
I love
cute.
it, though.
You're so much better than me with
You know
my
what?
cooch.
You know what one I actually do really like, but it's trashy, but I like that it's trashy, is just calling it your downstairs. My downstairs. Welcome to my downstairs.
Your bearded clam.
My muff top. I swear someone's listening on the other side of that door.
Okay. So, trigger warning for this week's episode. We're talking all about postpartum, coochie, vagina, cooters all day today. And so we're going to be talking about tearing, bleeding, peeing yourself, weird smells, and all of the trauma that no one warned us about. So if that's a little too real for you, if you've got some PTSD related to birth, this may or may not be the place you want to be.
Exactly.
So, Kaeli, what actually happens down there after birth? Because I've only seen it from like my own perspective. I've seen a couple people give birth during nursing school. And then when I worked in the ER, I had a couple precipitous labors and some people, delivering babies in front of me and they didn't know they were pregnant. So obviously I have a little bit of a different perspective, but you worked labor and delivery. So tell me about the vulva.
Of course. I would love to talk about all of it because I feel like the vagina is just a piece of the puzzle. Because I feel like, the uterus is the most important part. The uterus gets so big with baby because it starts off as, smaller than your fist, and then when you get your period it's a little bit bigger, but then it blows up into this huge giant balloon that stretches out with baby, and then your cervix dilates. It goes from 0 centimeters nice and thick, and then it starts to thin out and open up. So when you have baby, your cervix opens up, gets nice and ripe, what we call it, and then you get to 10 centimeters and you're ready to push baby out through your vagina. And even before you start pushing through your vagina, you can have so much swelling because your body is now pumping so much blood and creating so much blood for you and baby that everything becomes tender. All of your muscles, relaxin is produced in your body. So what that does is it makes it so your hips can become nice and loose. It also makes it so your feet can become bigger. It's crazy, the hormones that your body releases, so that way you can have a nice, safe delivery. But when this hormone's released, it allows your hips to get big, so that way you can open up baby through the vaginal canal where lots of swelling is happening, and then baby comes to the end of the perineum here where you can be fully dilated. Baby's pushing. Oh, I shouldn't say fully dilated. You already are fully dilated, but baby starts to crown, which is what that ring of fire is. The ring of fire is the terrible, terrible time when you
It's
feel
not a Johnny
babies.
Cash song.
No, but I think my favorite is when people come in with push playlists and they have songs like that on there, or push it real good. Dun, 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 dun. I love people with character that come through to have a baby, because it's like, yes, we're going to listen to music while I push this baby out. So the Ring of Fire references when baby is crowning, and it is just that unbearable burning before baby starts to come through. And then you have
So,
your beautiful baby.
sidebar, I made a playlist for my labor, all the
Uh-huh.
push theme songs. And man, let me tell you, when those contractions hit, I'm like, everybody shut up, no noise, no music. And I was just, I go into like a trance, like, and people are
Yeah.
talking to me, I'm like, and like my nurse would be like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm having a straight up bad time, but other than that, like, what do you mean, am I okay? No, pushing a person out, it hurts." Like, well, yeah, I had this whole playlist set up. I had my sister bring board games. They had popsicles, and so she was supposed to comfort me and have me all these distractions. But man, I was in the zone. I didn't need a distraction. I was just vibing.
Yeah. I feel like it's so wild to see the versions of women that come, like, one person becomes different versions of themselves. I remember there was a sweet woman, sweet when she came in. She went into labor, and I remember I reached my arm across her. She was unmedicated, and she bit my arm. And I was like, you can't do, I remember being like, you can't do that. And she's like, I'm so sorry. Everyone is so apologetic afterwards. I've been cursed at, I've been spit at. Like, it's insane the things that happen during labor, because you are just doing whatever feels raw and natural. And like biting down on something while you're pushing a baby out
Not
is
my
the most
arm,
fucking
yo.
raw and natural thing you can do. And I'm like, I get it, but like maybe not. Maybe just hold off.
Um, the vajayjay during labor, there's been a big move by women to kind of take power back. So,
Yeah.
they used to just knock you out, deliver your baby, you wake up and it's there. And then we've moved to, women laboring at home, then women laboring in the hospital. There's been so many transitions, but now women are pushing that cervical checks are pointless. It doesn't
Yeah.
tell you anything. It doesn't give you any information. It doesn't tell you how long it's going to take to labor. So what is your thoughts as a labor and delivery nurse? Should we be refusing them? Can we? If we want them, should we get them?
I think the most important thing to remember when you go in to any appointment is that you can refuse anything that you would like. You don't have to have the cervical exams. You can ask to have the delayed cord clamping. You can ask for immediate skin to skin. You can refuse cervical exams, of course. Always listen to your doctor. If you want a second opinion, ask for somebody else to come in. But if your doctor is telling you that there's maybe a reason that they want to check your cervix, however, if they're just like, let's check it every 2 hours to kind of speed this up, then be like, is there a reason that we're doing this? Always question, if you're not comfortable with the care that's happening, why is this happening? Why do you feel like this is pertinent to my care? Why do you think this is necessary?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of times doctors don't even take you into consideration. Like, I told my doctor I wanted my membrane swept. That was a discussion
Yeah.
her and I had. But she told me she was just checking my cervix and then swept my membranes while she was in there. Just do a little
Oh,
2-for-1. Didn't warn me. And I'm like, holy shit, you just touched the inside of my nose through my vagina. What were you doing? She's like, oh, I did your membrane sweep. And I'm like, we didn't talk about the pros, the cons, with the, is there a risk of complications? You just like full blown fisted me and
yeah.
didn't warn me. And I feel like a lot of doctors just kind of like do what they need to do. And a part of me wonders, because she wasn't on call, if she was like, oh, let's get this baby delivered when it's somebody else's issue. And
Yeah.
I did
Which
not go
can
back to her.
happen.
Yeah,
Being
I
a
didn't go
travel
back to her
nurse.
because of that. Like, but I feel like doctors a lot of times don't let you advocate for yourself because they're like, I know the right way to have this baby.
Right. And sure, doctors certainly know so much more than I do. I'm not a doctor, but I also know that I want to be consented for what's happening to my body, and there's nothing wrong with that. And it's so sad working as a travel nurse for so many years and then working just, at my home hospital. I feel like you do see a lot of OB abuse that you don't realize is abuse because it's just undereducation. If you don't know better, then you just don't know what is abuse and what is not. You can refuse a cervical exam. When somebody tells you no during one because it's painful, they should be stopping. Not, I'm almost done. It's so awful the amount of things that I've seen happen that in that position makes you so uncomfortable, but you know you have to speak up for your patient.
Well, and like, I'm a nurse, but I'm not your kind of nurse.
Yeah.
But I'm comfortable arguing with people in a medical setting. And so like my water broke in front of the L&D nurse, and she was like, "Okay, well, we're going to start you on PIT." And I was like, "What?" And I was like, "Hold on. I will not let you start me on PIT until I have an epidural in place. And also, my water broke 1 second ago. Why would you start me on PIT?"
Yeah.
And she like looked at me like, "Why are you questioning me?" And I'm like, "Because it's my body. I don't want to feel labor pains. I intended on getting the epidural at about 30 weeks pregnant and just riding it out. I don't want to labor. I don't want to feel it.
Right. And the
That's
option's
my
there.
choice."
Yeah.
You caught the labor as it happened. I understand that your water can break and it can be hours and it can be delayed, but like, what? I was feeling contractions prior. Why don't you let my body see what it can do? And she was like, "Okay. Well, okay." Like, I just feel like advocating for yourself puts you in such an uncomfortable position. So it's hard to even know what you can advocate for, what's worth arguing about. Like, I like my cervical checks. I like to know that I'm progressing for
Yeah.
my own sake of mind. But like, if I didn't want someone to finger me, I want that to be respected too.
Absolutely. Also, pain is so subjective. So if it's a painful endeavor for you and you don't want it, that's an option. You don't have to have it as frequently as your provider likes just because it helps put their day into perspective for them, if that makes sense. I remember when I was in labor J, when I went to the hospital, his grandmother and my sister-in-law at the time were there with me in the room, and my doctor had come in and we were talking, and as they're sitting in the chairs next to me, I'm laying on the bed. He just kind of throws my gown up and says, "All right, we're going to do a check now." And I was like, "Can you ask them to leave? Like, we didn't have a discussion about it. They have never seen my vagina and I didn't want them to see it. Like, we're all just sitting there, excited for this journey that's happening, but it doesn't mean they have to be in here while you're giving me a cervical exam." To me, I was like, "Whoa, please ask them to leave. Like, we can have a discussion about this, but I'm not ready to be on display like this."
My ex's mom walked into the room while they were putting my catheter in.
Get out!
Hello. And I think by the end of my labor, Jesus Christ himself could have walked in the room and been like, "I see your vagina." And I'm like, "I don't give it. I don't care.
Yeah.
Just get this baby out of me." But like, at that point, I still had a little bit of dignity left. And I feel like it wasn't preserved the way it could have been. And like, as soon as I was going to start pushing, my mom and his mom walked to the head of the bed to watch me push. And I was like, "Ma'ams, you're going to stand right here." By the end of it, everyone saw everything. But that,
Yeah.
before it started, I was like, "You don't need to watch."
And I think that's everyone's transition of emotions is you start with the dignity. You have it. Not that you lose dignity, you lose your give a damn as you go. Like, by the time baby comes out, your boobs are split to the side, baby's up here, you're dripping colostrum because baby's crying. And you're like, everybody can watch. Everybody can see it.
Yeah, like, people who labor naked, I think it's so natural. And then, like, people post it on Facebook, and then people are like, "I wouldn't share this on Facebook." But like, I don't give a shit what you think. That's the most powerful picture I can imagine.
Yes.
I love the labor and delivery photographers who put it in black and white, and you just see this raw power coming from the women. I'm like, every time I see it, I'm like, this is fantastic.
I
And then
love
there's
it.
always hate, and people are like, "I can't believe you'd post your naked body." It's like, if that's what they're comfortable with, why is it any of your goddamn business?
And you're right. It's such a proud, powerful moment. Why wouldn't you want to share that with everybody? I mean,
Absolutely.
I love it.
I'm gonna next labor and delivery, I'm gonna get a videographer. I'm gonna have 6 photographers, and we're gonna post it all over the Mom AF social media. You guys are all gonna
Hell
see my
yes.
7 different views of my cooch.
And I'm just going to be so proud. I'm going to be, look at it.
You're gonna
Look at
be
it.
there. What do you mean?
Oh, this is true.
We're gonna have Kaylee's face right next to my
Just-
my 10-centimeter crowning. It'll be beautiful.
just my hand on the head being like, look at how big this head is. Look at all the hair.
Doesn't it look just like me?
Look at all the hair. It matches.
You know, honestly, when I was crowning, me and my husband had this huge argument my whole pregnancy because my son came out bald, B-A-L-D, bald. And I was like, my baby's not going to have any hair. And he's like, my baby is going to have hair. We argued about it. And then as I'm crowning, they're like, look at all that hair. And I was like, I will leave the room. You guys can finish without me because my baby's not going to have hair.
I said like the same things, but I thought my belly was a huge basketball. It was all belly, but it was ginormous. I was like, he's going to be like a 10-pounder. He's going to be a fat chunk. No, he came out 6 pounds, 7 ounces. Like I thought he was going to be the baby that you lose like the Cheerios in the thighs. I was like, that's going to be, because if you saw me, you'd be like, that's definitely going to be. No, he's 6 pounds, 7 ounces. Like 21 inches, a string bean baby with jet black straight hair, so long. And I was like, what happened? I still look like I had 2 babies in me.
Got to chunk
Vagina
that baby
swollen as hell. I was like, what just happened here?
No, my son was 7'4" and my daughter was 8'2". And she had the chubbiest looking cheek. She wasn't even that big. I think it was all just chubby cheekedness. Because like as soon as you look like neck down, she looked like a normal baby. But those cheeks were huge, so cute. I love me a chubby baby.
You showed me those big fat cheeks.
What chunka tunker.
Oh,
I love
so
chunky
cute.
babies.
Me too. Every time someone delivered a fat baby in the hospital, we would all go into the room, every nurse, because it was like, let me see the fat baby. I want to see that chunky baby.
Like I'm almost lactating right now because I'm just like, feed them.
Yes.
Okay, so episiotomies. Is this a normal occurrence? Is it almost everybody? Hardly anybody? Can we just say we don't want that shit?
So you can always say that you don't want it. However, it's like my least favorite part of somebody putting it into a birthing plan because I promise you, it's not our plan either. Nobody wants to give you an episiotomy. It makes me nauseous. I get tunnel vision when it happens. And I feel like as a nurse, when you see a provider go to reach for scissors, you turn your head because that's really the only time they're reaching for scissors. That being said, every provider that I've worked with, nobody wants to give an episiotomy. However, if your perineum is really tight and your baby is, there trying to come out, they want to give it a little extra room. They'll do things like a vacuum to put on top of baby's head to help pull it out. But if, there's kind of an emergency and they need to cut, then they will. It doesn't happen very often. Like I said, you can refuse it. However, in the moment, that means that they're pushing baby back up and you're running to the OR for a C-section. So it's like the pros and cons of refusing it when you could have a vaginal delivery and, a safer delivery than pushing baby back up under your pubic bone into the OR to have a major abdominal surgery. And I feel like people often think that it's like a straight line down to your butthole, but that's not what happens either. It's a medial-lateral cut that they do. So here's your vagina.
Imagine your vagina is a clock.
It's this. So it's this here. They're doing a cut like this. They're usually doing a cut like this. So it's to the side. Nobody wants to cut down like that. So it's really, if a provider's doing it, it's usually for a good reason.
So you don't think any doctors do it because they're tired of waiting for that baby to come out?
That's not what I said. I have worked with doctors where when you see them go to reach for a scissor, you kick the table. You kick it away just a little bit so they can't reach it. Because you're like, that baby just... I have worked with so many good doctors, more than not, but it sucks that it is those few that like really stick out in your head. Like I can tell you the doctors that have been like, please stop. And I know I'm just a nurse and they have more experience than me, but you can tell when something is impatience versus like pertinence.
Do they give pain medicine? Like, do they numb anything before they give episiotomies, or is it just...
Usually, yes. I have seen one time where it was an unmedicated no lidocaine use because there just like wasn't time for it. But usually there's time. And so if a woman's lucky enough to have the epidural, you won't have to use the lidocaine. But if you're unmedicated, you would like to have lidocaine. But those are things that they usually have on the table beforehand. The table is stocked with things just in case of an emergency. Like in the table, there's going to be a vacuum. You've got your tubes for cord gases for baby in case you need, and just a bunch of extra other things in there, all in case of emergencies.
And then what about tears? I've heard of people tearing like 4th degree or like tearing up, tearing down. All the tearing. Tell me about tears.
There's so many tears, all kinds of tears. This should also be a Dr. Seuss book. So let's talk about the tearing. It's awful. I mean, it's not awful, but it definitely happens. Like if you're a first-time mom delivering a baby for the first time, you are more likely than not going to tear. I feel like it's so rare to, on your first baby, not tear. That's like the golden nugget of moms.
Can I tell you birth story? When I had my first, I only needed 1 stitch.
Hell
and
yeah.
My pastor came and was like, oh, so it was the husband's stitch. And I was appalled.
Get out.
This man of God walked in and said, oh, was it a husband's stitch then?
Oh my God.
And I wasn't even married.
I would have been livid. Like, get the fuck out.
Yeah.
Ew, I'm nauseated when men say stuff like that. Like, is that what you think of her? That's what you think of the love of your life when you say things like this? Ugh, die.
Gross.
I know it's terrible. Okay, I don't mean die, but maybe a little bit. Let's go back to tearing. So if you had just 1 stitch, you might have just had what they call a 1st degree, and that's usually with just skin, which still hurts. Any kind of tearing in your downstairs, it's painful. So I don't care if you had a 1st degree, 4th degree, episiotomy, it all sucks. All of it. So there's your 1st degree, your 2nd degree, and your 2nd degree is when like they go through skin and muscle, and then your 3rd and 4th degree is skin, muscle, and rectal tissue. So good luck pooping, ladies. It's not going to be a good time. And then the episiotomy, yikes, we already talked about this, and it gets, pretty deep in there. And remember, you're going to be bleeding. And a lot of people think that the bleeding is from the tearing that happens, but it's not. I mean, some of the bleeding is, but it's from your uterus. It's from your uterus going from completely closed to completely open. And I know you can't see my hands, but it goes from literally nothing that you can put your finger through to the biggest grapefruit, because I can't think of anything that big right now. And then it goes back. So your uterus goes from being the size of a balloon back down to a grapefruit, but also sometimes it doesn't go right back down to its original size. It's actually pretty rare that it goes back down to its original size. So it's going to bleed for a little while as it heals, and that's normal. It could take weeks. And the swelling too, that can also take weeks to go back down to normal. It could take 4 to 6 weeks. It could take months. It all depends on how fast your body heals.
Well, what's better, a 4th degree tear or an episiotomy?
That's a gross question. Nothing's better. None of those are good.
Well, no, for healing.
I'm just kidding.
In nursing school, they told us it's better to tear naturally versus an episiotomy. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I always try to explain it to people. It's like tearing a piece of paper. Those edges, if you just, put a little bit of water on it, they go back together by themselves pretty easily. And that's what happens with a natural tear. Whereas an episiotomy, it's those really nice crisp edges where they do not just go back together. They don't heal very healthily on their own. So we always prefer just a natural tear so that way your body can help heal naturally. So things that you definitely want to use when you tears, because it's going to burn a lot when you pee. And that's just because you have, stitches there. And if you didn't, thank God. No tearing, beautiful. But you still might be really sore from all that pushing. You can use things like big ice pads, the lovely Mush underwear. You have the the pad to put in there. You can use a derma spray, which is like a numbing spray that you can put on your vagina, and like the Tux pads or the witch hazel pads, whatever you call them, all like those are going to help a lot with swelling. But I always found that if you had the big ice packs and you break them and then you put some cold water on the top of it, that is like chef's kiss. It helps so much. It just makes it colder a little bit longer. We put together a list of products for you guys. We link it below in our show notes. It's all the products that we have used as moms that we think would be perfect or maybe even just comfortable enough for you to use as a new mom. So we'll put that below for you. Hold on.
So I didn't think that my postpartum bleeding was like particularly bad, but I've seen this big movement on social media of people taking those mesh undies, throwing them in the garbage, and just wearing regular Depend diapers. And I am freaking here for it. Like, I think that's the smartest idea I've ever heard. Yeah. And then you change the baby, you throw the whole thing in the garbage. And it just sounds so much more convenient than those mesh panties that actually do nothing for you.
Except they're really comfortable. I think they're so comfy. I've never worn Depends personally, but I don't know if they're like super comfy.
I think for our next podcast, we both have to wear Depends the entire session, and we'll let you know how comfortable
I will. I'm on board. I'll try them on.
They
can't be that uncomfy.
No, I feel like the mesh panties, like, and the size of the pad is so big and it doesn't stay where it needs to go. And I'd wind up bleeding into the underwear and into my pants rather than having it be caught. Like, I just felt like I had more issues than it solved.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that makes sense.
I tried to transition as quick as possible into my regular underwear, even if it meant throwing out every single pair I wore until I healed. Like, I did not like my mesh panties at all.
Well, I've had some women in the hospital who have brought in the Thinx underwear, that the period blood absorbers, as bluntly as that is.
The period panties?
Yeah, the period panties. And they worked phenomenally. Like, they were comfortable. So, I mean, if you're going to the hospital, your bleeding might be a lot heavier at first. But if you have those, wear those.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll put those below. Some Thinx panties.
Let's talk about our first poopy.
Mine took weeks. How about yours? I think like a week, I should say. Let's not be dramatic.
To poop?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I pooped before I left the hospital.
I did not, which I thought at the time was strange that you didn't have to poop before leaving the hospital. But they're like, no, like you just had a baby. It's a normal event. Now they let me go home.
Oh, I thought you had to poop before they discharged you.
No, I learned that as a nurse. Anywhere else, you have to poop before discharge. But on labor and delivery, because it's like a natural event that's happening, there's something else wrong with your body. You're healthy, so you can leave, especially if it's part of your norm to not poop every day.
Yeah. I remember them pushing stool softeners on me and I'm like, could you mind your own business? And then I was like, oh my gosh, could you double it, triple it, give me more? Like, it was a really dicey situation. I went in there sweating, like holding all the sides. Like, I was like, I don't think I'm going to make it, y'all. It felt like I was having another baby.
Yes.
Not because it was so big or anything. It was just like, I didn't want to use a single muscle in my pelvic floor to produce this adventure. Like, I wasn't ready and I was scared the whole time. It wasn't as bad as I thought it would be, but it certainly wasn't an enjoyable poop.
Yeah, I feel like that's also something that's not talked about enough is how unenjoyable that poop is afterwards, just because your vagina is so sore, that pushing movement that you're doing. I remember feeling my vagina like pulsing as I was pushing because I was so swollen, and I was like, is my vagina going to fall out or am I going to poop? It was a serious concern that I had.
I think even 6 weeks postpartum, I was like, I'm going to do the Couch to 5K program. I'm going to get back to running.
Yeah.
And I remember jogging and I literally could feel like my vagina just like, boom, boom. Every step I took, it felt like my vagina got lower in my body. And I'm like, if I keep jogging, it's going to come out and I'm not ready for that. So we just walked after that. But I was like,
yeah, I felt like I could feel, I remember walking because I think it was like every mom's journey to do like Couch to 5K afterwards just to like get our bodies moving again. My labia just like rubbing against each other as I walked because it was so swollen. I could barely close my legs and I was like, nobody talks about this. Why is nobody talking about this?
You got to put some chapstick down there for your lower lips.
Yes. What's the nipple cream? The The lanolin. I'm going to put lanolin down
Yeah.
there, lanolin up here. I don't need any chafing, but that's what's happening to my
No.
body.
So let's talk about some common myths.
Yes.
What about the myth that you are going to be forever loose down there? Vagina's now a cavern. Hello, hello, hello.
I mean, it's normal to definitely feel that way just because you did have such a huge event happen, but not every delivery is on a trajectory of a big tear, or even you might not even have that much swelling. So you might feel normal a few weeks afterwards, but your muscles tighten back up and it's just normal to not feel regular afterwards. Like, you're gonna heal. It just takes time.
So, how about the myth of everyone poops during labor?
I want it to be 50% of you poop during labor. And if you don't want to know, I'm going to say you didn't poop, but you probably pooped.
I asked my mom and she told me it wasn't any of my business.
She's right. She's right.
I was like, it's my body. I didn't even ask the second baby. The first baby apparently was not my business. But from my understanding, the pushing of poop out is a good sign that you're using the right muscles. Is that right?
That is so true. I tell moms that who are super self-conscious every time. Like, because sometimes even if I lie to you, you know you pooped because we all know what shit smells like. So if you do it, I'm like, no, it's great. You're pushing in the right spot because you are. You're using those same muscles to push baby out. So if you shit, like, just be happy you're on your way.
And your labor and delivery nurse is probably a poop ninja and she'll steal it away before anyone notices.
Yes, we have peppermint on board to hide the smells. There's somebody outside the door ready to grab that bag to get the smell out of here. We know what to do.
So I will say, after I delivered my daughter, my labor and delivery nurse was wiping my ass. I was like, did I poop? And she's like, no, the baby pooped on you. On the way out, my daughter shit on me. And so she was wiping baby poop off my butt.
That's the ultimate first bonding experience.
She was just so excited it came out. She shit herself.
That's a good sign. Everything's working. That's what we want to know. Can baby poop yet? So if she's pooped already, fantastic.
All right. How about the myth that you cannot have a vaginal birth after a C-section?
Oh, so not true. Especially if you want to have that, talk to your doctor. If it's medically necessary, sure. If there's a reason your body can't have a vaginal delivery, yeah. But there are so many reasons that you can do what we call a VBAC, or vaginal birth after cesarean. And it's what we call a TOLAC, a trial of labor after cesarean, where we have everything ready because, yes, you are at an increased risk for bleeding and other what's the word I want to use? Help me out here.
Complications?
Thank you. A simple word, couldn't think of. Other complications. But if you're in a hospital setting and everything lines up for you and your body and for baby, then there's no reason you can't do that, especially if there's anesthesia in-house. I feel like usually a lot of the places I've worked at, the only reason they don't do them is if anesthesia is not in-house. And that means that anesthesia isn't available to do what we do, a spinal or general anesthesia.
So I've seen, are there like specific providers who don't do VBACs? Because I've seen like on Facebook that people are like, I'm looking for a provider who will support a VBAC. So I'm guessing there are certain providers who just won't do them.
Yeah, I mean, a provider cannot do whatever they don't want to do, I guess. But also, like, if you don't do like high risk pregnancies, because that would be considered high risk, then you wouldn't be doing it that way. So yeah, you'd have to just find a provider that's comfortable with doing it. And I feel like if you're going online to look for a provider who will do it, there might have been a provider who told you that they wouldn't do it, but that may be medically necessary where they won't do it.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
And our final myth: you can train your vagina not to tear.
You can try to get your vagina not to tear, but nothing is guaranteed. You can do massages. I know there was a midwife that I worked with that she would tell people to just use olive oil when you're in the shower and just, when you're nice and warm, just kind of like rub it, at like the base of your vagina to just stretch it out. I was like, oh, olive oil? Okay. I know a lot of other providers
go down there and
a lot of
run
other
it.
providers will be like, use mineral oil. But I think a lot of people use primrose oil to help.
I did.
There you go, to help really just stretch that muscle out. But nothing guarantees no tearing, nothing at all, unless you have a C-section.
I think I did it with my son and not as much with my daughter. And with my son, I had less tearing. But I also, after I had my daughter, I wound up going to pelvic floor therapy. And my pelvic floor therapist said that she does perineal massages with her patients and teaches them how to stretch the perineum, which is the area between your cooch and your beehole. And she teaches people how to use a tool to get that area more what is the word I'm looking for? Like, it helps train that tissue to be more flexible.
Stretch.
Yeah, and so it reduces the risk of tearing. So pelvic floor therapy can start before you're in labor, and they can do a lot to help with like your sciatica, back pain. They can do a lot of training to help prevent your abs from separating. Like, they're gonna separate, but keeping it strong so that you don't experience as much. And then after you deliver, they definitely can help with improving bowel, bladder, and sexual function. And let me tell you, they gave me my orgasms back, and it was the greatest gift anyone's ever given me. So I think I never was encouraged to do pelvic floor therapy. And after doing it, I was like, why don't they just give this to every woman who ever has a baby? Just be like, hey, you should do this. Because I had to ask my doctor. And no one talked to me about it until I brought it up.
And I think it's because we're in such a state of being reactive instead of proactive. I never heard of people talking about it before delivery too, but it can be so helpful for you during delivery to know, like you said, how to massage the perineum, or how working out before delivery can help you during delivery. Things like that aren't really talked about as much. It's really just, how is baby doing during your pregnancy next week? This is how baby's doing during pregnancy. And it's not much of a discussion of, how is your body doing, until something goes wrong, when you're like, oh, this muscle hurts. And then you hear, oh, that's normal. It's just, your abdominal muscle stretching and getting ready. But you don't really hear too much about the proactive to help on the other end of it.
Well, also men get pelvic floor therapy when they have issues with their prostate, when they have erectile dysfunction. Boys go too. And I pause it for just a second. I just don't want you to see my butt. I brought in tools. So when I first went to pelvic floor therapy, I was like super, super nervous. I was like, this is going to be awkward. And then I read up everything on Reddit, and it was like, they did this, that, and the other thing. I was like, oh God.
It's always the worst.
So I mentioned that my OB fisted me, and then I had to go to this other old lady to get fisted again. My husband's like, I am so tired of watching you get fisted by other people. But the reason I went is because I had SI joint dysfunction. So that relaxin that you were talking about that loosens your hips up, it worked so good on me that my hip came out of position.
Oh God.
And it's not like a dislocation of like your femur or your shoulder where they just go and it's back into place. My vagina muscles were so out of sync that I had to go and get pelvic floor therapy to fix my muscles and get my hip back in position. And so my first appointment, I got fingered, and she like put her finger in me, and she's like, do a Kegel. And my brain, 6-8 weeks postpartum, was like, push. That's not what a Kegel is.
But if you don't know, you don't know.
Well, I knew what a Kegel was, but you get so focused on it. Every doctor's told you to push for 9 months, and now all of a sudden you're like, pull. So I did a Kegel, and she was like, oh, you have a low grade for your Kegel because your muscles aren't contracting correctly. And I'm like, excuse me, my vagina's flawless. So when you put your finger in, if you Kegel, you'll feel your coccyx, which is your butt tailbone, will push up against your finger. if you're using all your muscles correctly. So I was having a ton of discomfort to the point where when I would have an orgasm, regardless of if there was penetration or not, the muscle that wraps around the back of your vagina goes into your hip. I would have an orgasm and it would yank on my hip and it would hurt so bad. And I probably wouldn't have gone to pelvic floor therapy for any reason at all whatsoever until my orgasms were affected. And I'm like, I'm going to the doctor. I would have gone anywhere.
Yeah.
You could have told me to go to some, man
Witch
in the
doctor.
street living in a box. Yeah, I would have done whatever you said, because my orgasms are like the most important thing to me.
Yeah.
So, through the process, she had me get this tool.
Oh, wow.
And you get to snake your cooch. And obviously, this tool's very intimidating. Like, what end do you put in?
Yeah.
That is the joy of pelvic floor therapy, is you have some lady teach you how to roto-root your vagina and find those muscles that are tense. And I pressed on this spot in my vagina and I was like jumping off the table. It hurt so bad. And I felt this knock, 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 and the muscle released. Girl.
Was it everything?
It was life changing. So, I had to eventually work the muscles in my rear end, because your vagina muscles run through your rectum into that whole area. So I loosened them in that side. I had to loosen them on the other. And eventually I went to the chiropractor. I went to pelvic floor therapy. I went to regular physical therapy.
These orgasms back.
I also couldn't bend. I couldn't pick my daughter up out of her crib. I couldn't put my own shoes on. I couldn't lift my right leg up without pulling it with my hand. I used a foam roller at home. It took years, 2 full years before my hip went back into place and my orgasms came back. And let me tell you, it's a freaking journey that you're going to be on. But even now, my daughter just turned 3. When I get to move in a way that doesn't cause pain, when I get to have sex that I actually enjoy, oh, it is so worth it. And I have never heard of anybody who delivered a baby and hurt for years after. Like, I've heard like, oh, I got an epidural and I have back issues.
Yeah.
But your hip being out of place, you can't come? Like, I didn't hear about that. I probably wouldn't have had a kid if I knew it could affect my orgasms.
But that's just it. Nobody is having these conversations out loud because it all feels taboo. And nobody wants to feel like they're the only person who's experiencing this, or have somebody look at you being like, what do you mean you can't orgasm anymore? Like, no, it's it's not normal, but like, it's a normal conversation to have. You should be able to have this conversation with people. And it just be like, oh yeah, me too.
Yeah, and I mean, I experienced prolapse issues, and nothing's going right with my junk, like awful. And what are you gonna do? Like, call up your friend and be like, I think my uterus just fell out. Like, I mean, I'm close enough with my friend that I would do that, but a lot of people are like, I don't want anybody to know. And then a part of the reason I knew I had a prolapse is because I saw a post on Facebook. I saw a post where they were talking about putting your finger in your vagina to push your poop backwards into your rectum. And they're like, hey, by the way, that's not normal. And if you do that, you probably have a rectocele. And I was like, what? What other podcaster do you know that's going to openly admit that their asshole falls out?
Because it happens.
Right. Like, I don't have the prolapse of coming out of my body, but my rectal tissue is so weak that I have to reposition my poop sometimes. I've had to stick my finger in my butt to get it out. Who talks about that? Would you have like a normal conversation with people and be like, oh yeah, I had to manually disimpact myself the other day? Let me tell you, when they talk about stool softeners and laxatives, I get excited. And I'm like, let's talk about pooping.
Let's talk about it.
Passion. Because if you're not pooping right, nothing's working right.
Yeah, these are conversations that are normal to be having. To all of our listeners out there, if you're experiencing this, you're not alone. Feel free to write us about it. We'll share your journeys.
Let me hear about your poo problems. Because I got them, you
Yes.
got them, and we got them.
We've all got them. And now it's time for Tales from the Reddit, because why not? We want to tell you what we've loved. All right, so my story is I had to have a D&C 5 days after birth of my firstborn for a uterine infection caused by a distended bladder. Ugh. Basically, my bladder wouldn't empty due to birth trauma, and it caused my uterus to not empty either. I was peeing what I thought was a normal amount and bleeding, but it being my first, I didn't know anything was wrong until I spiked 104.7 fever on Thanksgiving Day. My midwife was like, go to the ER now. Anyway, I had the surgery the next day. When I had gotten back to my room, I was still mostly numb from the spinal anesthesia, and a pastor from my church was there to visit. After his visit, he was praying a nice prayer, and I started to shit myself profoundly. I could not make it stop. I mentally prayed my own desperate prayer that it would stay silent. It did, but it was definitely deadly. I mean, if you haven't shit your pants, are you even a mom?
The one I found was a week out from delivery. I decided to try and be brave, taking the baby and a 4-year-old out for a walk. I get halfway around our loop and have to poop. So I hustle back, I get to the garage, and it just starts flowing. Thankfully, it was contained in my pants, but I just left the kids in the wagon strapped in, and I ran inside to take care of it. The worst part was my 4-year-old telling everyone she knew that mommy pooped her pants.
Kids are so great like that. Like when you go to a public restroom and they, Mom, are you pooping? Mom, are you pooping? Mm-hmm. But listen, your body just created life. It's allowed to fall apart for a bit. That doesn't make you broken. It makes you magic, messy, bleeding, haunted magic.
And whether your baby came out the front door or out the moonroof, your vagina's not ruined. She's just seen some things.
Send us your haunted vagina confessions at hello.momaf@gmail.com. We know you've got one. Leave a review if you laughed, cried, or squeezed your legs shut.
So whether you're tired AF, bored AF, or just mom AF, you're one of us. We are celebrating this wild ride with a giveaway. To enter, find us on Insta at MomAF the podcast or MomAF on Facebook. Comment what kind of AF are you? Likes and shares are always appreciated but not required. As long as you put that comment, you're in. Winner gets a self-care gift sent to their house. Time to get relaxed.
Oh,
as fuck.
yeah.